The Uganda modern state is just 30 years old under the 1995 constitutional order. Some of you might know it is this order which in many ways answered the questions of the civil war that was fought in the 1980s in the South, but also that order ended the 20-year insurgency in the North by 2009. This restored economic progress, as some of you might know. Now, whereas the nation-state idea for the world began in 1648, the year 1648, the Treaty of Westphalia, for some of you who might know, it is fairly new to our continent. The idea established borders, it encouraged economic planning, it built institutions to adjudicate conflicts, it brought stability, it brought pluralistic faith. This idea of a nation-state in turn triggered scientific inquiry and competition among nation-states and eventual transformation of societies that started ahead of others. This is why, within a century, starting from around 1750, the Industrial Revolution began, and it fundamentally changed Europeans who would later govern us. Those of us who are still in a feudal state are not able to defend ourselves with modern weaponry. Now, a country can look and act stable, but if her state institutions are structurally weak, or they are growing so slowly and not keeping pace with the demands of citizens, of young people, that nation-state may not stand pressure internally, later on, if it is pressed from outside by external elements. I want to give you an example of Libya. Libya had the highest GDP, or gross domestic product per capita, in the African continent of around $12,000 in 2010 per person. Very high consumption of electricity at 3,660 kilowatt hour per capita. It had water usage per capita 250 liters per day. It had education literacy rate at 88.4% for everybody above the age of 15. There had been compulsory education and massive investments in education from the 1970s under President Muammar Gaddafi at the time, from 70s onwards. Libya was also considered a fairly equal society, given much of our oil revenues went into building air, water, and land infrastructure, which was sometimes considered somewhat first world class infrastructure. However, the country went down fast, leaving in its wake insecurity, refugees, and terror groups in the Sahel region, below that country, and beyond it. Why? Why did this happen? This is because Libya, while it looked developed, its constituent parts, let's call them nations, inside, because nation and states are different. A state is recent, nations are old. The constituent parts had nothing in common. The western part of the country, which is called Tripolitania region, was always influenced by the Mediterranean Europe, especially in Greek and Italian, its Greek and Italian past, who settled in that part of our continent older. They always saw themselves differently, quite differently from the rest of the country. Now, the word Tripoli comes from Tripolis, or a place of three cities. This is from the time of the Phoenician and Romans from the Western Libyan in Greek language. Now, the center and south of Libya is occupied by the people called the Fezzan people, who are closely linked to the country of Chad in the south, and many were and still remain nomads connected to the Sahel. The Sahel region, the word Sahel in Arabic is Sahil, which means coast. Now, the eastern part, the ancient Cyrenaica or Benghazi, where the rebellion started in 2011, that part always looked to Egypt and to the Arab world. Now, Colonel Muammar Gaddafi was the central glue that held that country together. And he grew it He grew that country of Libya within 42 years to a nation state of influence and capacity and wealth, depending on where you stand ideologically. However, states are not willed into existence by money or by goodwill. States are a result of deliberate, conscious, collective ethic that cut through chauvinistic, tribal, and religious facades. In Libya, the actual state institutions that were necessary to keep the country stable remained very weak. What's the lesson? The lesson is that unity and cooperation are so foundational to state building. And so are incomes at the household level, so that people are out of poverty, along with jobs for graduates who have been educated expensively by parents, and parents have very high expectations from government. It's a combination of things to keep a state growing, a nation state growing. Now, Uganda and much of sub-Saharan Africa is not Libya. I need to state that. We are different culturally, and we are different in many other ways I don't have time to mention. History, though, draws lessons for us to avoid pitfalls. In Uganda, we hold regular elections, and we went through 2 civil wars that are etched, whose lessons are etched in our collective hearts and memory and minds, to avoid the mistakes and equally learn from the successes we have had in the last 40 years.